Every 15 minutes, a newborn comes into this world already fighting withdrawal from opioids. But what if, instead of judgment and shame, they were met with love, compassion, and revolutionary care? Today, we dive deep with Tara.sundem. She's the co-founder of Hushabye Nursery, an extraordinary haven dedicated to healing infants born into addiction while empowering families to break cycles of trauma. This conversation is going to change how you see addiction, motherhood, and I believe hope itself. Let's get started. Thank you, Tara, for coming on the podcast today.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Your intro was great. I can't wait to listen.
Yeah, that'll be great. Yeah, I want to kind of go over, I know you've devoted over 30 years to newborns, and we're going to go through your story here and struggling with NAS. What initially drew you to these vulnerable babies, and what kind of keeps that passion burning after 30 years?
Yeah. Well, I initially, graduated college, I wanted to work with kids and ended up finding myself in the neonatal intensive care unit. Ended up going back after like 5-6 years, went and got my master's degree to be a nurse practitioner. And I loved caring for the babies that were the size of a dollar bill. I loved that adrenaline rush. I loved it. And in 2015, my boys needed me closer to home. And I was like, yeah, I'll take one for the team. I'm going to be bored off my butt, but I will go to the little hospital that's close to where we live. And that's where I'll work just because you need me there. Not just, but that's what I did. And when I went, it was a little 6-bed unit. I was used to working in a 100-bed unit where you took care of babies that were less than a pound. And I'm taking care of, big babies. And my eyes were really open because 6-bed unit, we'd have 5 or 6 babies withdrawing at one time. And this is in my community, like 5 miles away from where I live. And I'm like, where are these babies coming from? And it wasn't like just once, it was continuous. And I ended up calling my peers at my other hospital I'd work at. And I'm like, how many babies do you have withdrawing there? And they're like, I don't know. And I'm like, no, I honestly, I need you to like stop and count how many on each of you guys' teams. How many do you have? And okay, so we had 8 teams, but everyone had 1 or 2 babies. And it was like, you have a dozen babies that are withdrawing that honestly were not our focus at all.
And that was only in your town.
Say that one more time.
That was only in your town.
Yeah, that was just in my, and
That's
that was actually,
wild.
that was just one of the hospitals. Then I started calling just in our East Valley of Phoenix, counting the other hospitals. And I did it about every 6 weeks. And there were usually 18 to 24 babies withdrawing just in our East Valley of Phoenix, Arizona, which is insane. And then it kind of came a mission of going, okay, you guys, we're totally missing the ball. We're not serving a population that even has any priority at all. Honestly, I was the nurse. I was the nurse practitioner that you give me a baby that's going to cry for 12 hours. This is not a good day. I don't want to take care of this baby that's going to cry. And I also don't want to care for parents that are homeless, that did this to their baby. I did not understand opiate use disorder or substance use disorder. I didn't understand mental health. When you go to school to be a doctor, unless you're going in behavioral health, or a nurse, you learn medical. You don't learn behavioral health. If we need behavioral health help, we do a consult to, a professional to do that.
Right.
I don't take care of that. And my eyes were just really open because 24 babies at any given time, just in our East Valley, we are totally not serving them correctly. And I ended up finding out that, gosh, if it's quiet in our nursery, so say we didn't have 6 babies, say we only had 2, and we had enough staff at certain parts of the day with certain nurses or certain doctors, the babies did better. And it was like, okay, how come they're doing better when Deb is on, but when Georgina's on, they're not good? Why is that? And yes, babies have, different times of the day where they're having a more difficult time, but there was a pattern. And you really were like, boy, okay, if Deb's on, they do great. You never need to give them, extra morphine. You usually can wean. But then at night you would find between 2 and 5 a.m. I had a dad, 3 sets of parents tell me, but the last dad, who was an adoptive dad that we had taken care of his previous baby, probably about 18 months prior, all of them told me at several occasions that they were not going to leave their baby that next night. And I was like, what do you, no, we don't have a place for you to stay. Why don't you feel comfortable with us? And every one of them, not until the adoptive dad said it, did it make me go, we've got to do better, which shame on me because I don't think I'm biased, but obviously I am. But when they said they weren't going to leave because we were going to give their baby medicine, morphine is what we treat them with, and that they'll never get out of here, that was an eye opener.
Mm.
And they all three said between 2 and 5 in the morning, you're going to give my baby more medication. And I was like, no, we're not. Well, guess what? When you look back at the data, you went, gosh, by golly, we do. At 2:30, 3:40, 3:45, we are giving way more doses of medication, bumping up the amount. And just think, we're tired. I mean, kind of edgy on a night shift. You have these babies that are crying. You don't have enough staff because it's the night shift. It just wasn't a good environment. And gosh darn it, we could do better, and our babies deserve more. And that's where it all started.
What is, I want to get kind of reframe this for everybody, and you're the perfect person to talk about this. What is NAS truly like through the eyes of a newborn? Help us feel what these babies experience, especially like you're talking there in those first critical weeks.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good question. Well, one mom dumbed down withdrawal to me as the worst flu and migraine times 100. So imagine when I have the flu, I want it to end as quick as possible. I just want to fall asleep. And when I wake up, I want to feel better. So imagine a newborn being born within 24 hours of age, all of a sudden going from being able to eat and loving food to being sick to their stomach, throwing up, having horrible GI symptoms, diaper rashes that follow the diarrhea that they have, not being able to sleep, increased tone, your bones ache, all of the things. Imagine that, but then also add on that you don't have your mom there or you don't have your dad, and you're all by yourself in this really bright environment, because that's where we care for babies that are unwell in the hospital. It would be like you and I going to a rock concert. We wouldn't go to a rock concert if we were withdrawing. If we had the flu, we would be quiet, dark environment. And so I just honestly, for a baby, like to really think about it, what they're going through, it's has to be miserable. They just look like they hurt. They have like a furrowed brow, so like such a serious brow, even when they're sleeping, and they look like they're in a deep sleep, but it's just a grimace. Like, I just don't feel good. And I can't imagine doing that without your most near and dear.
Hmm. Yeah, I would, because when you think of withdrawals, we always think of adults withdrawing, and a lot of us may have had family members or something that we've seen or kind of are heard or watched, movies with that. But to think of it as like you come into this world withdrawing, and then you guys have to kind of like ease it off and play around with, to try to get that. How long does it take a baby before they're fully withdrawn? I mean,
Every baby is different. The national average of acute, like the really hard withdrawal across the nation, is about 22 days for them to get through. So imagine you have the flu or COVID for 22 days. All of us would think we were going to die
die.
if it
Yeah,
was that
exactly.
long. At Hushabye, our quiet, dark environment with one-to-one caregivers, with everybody understanding that, guess what? Moms are the best medicine. And so we have to make them feel comfortable, to trust us, and to feel safe, to be able to be there to parent their baby. But we do it in 8 days. We get through that,
Holy
get them
smokes.
through that really hard withdrawal for 8 days. There is some literature that shows that intermittent withdrawal symptoms, which could look like colic, so it's kind of hard to tell as they get older. Intermittently, there's a couple of studies that are saying that they will show signs of withdrawal up to 9 months
Mm.
after being born. Talking with families, we know that these babies are really hypersensitive from the get-go. And so you kind of just go, is that withdrawal, or is that this baby's personality that they can't handle like tons going on? But if we can make the acute even 1 day shorter, I know that I would like my flu to be one day shorter. We should.
What do you think is there? I know culturally there would be, and the environment also would be damaging, if the parents aren't getting help. But a child 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, if you remove the environment, and I know that's got to be a high percentage, but if you remove the environment, is it detrimental to their growth,
They're
and maturing?
developmental. We believe that there is a link between developmental delays and deficits. We believe that they're a little bit more hyperactive. And again, it's hard to take the environment, out of that.
Food, all that
Someone
stuff.
in
Yeah.
recovery, new to recovery, even they just may have a little bit more hectic lifestyle, but we do know that there's that link between ADHD, sensory processing disorder. I think the biggie is now people are listening and going, maybe these kiddos will do better in a 10 kid classroom versus a 30 kid classroom.
Yes.
And
Yes.
and maybe they won't be considered the naughty kids if they're put in an environment that they need to be in environment. Because once you get labeled the naughty kid, you're going to be the naughty kid.
Yes. Of
And
course.
that's not where our babies need to be. And we've proven that we can get them in the right environment. We can get them through that withdrawal process sooner. I think as we're following our families more and more, we're going to be able to get more data to go, guess what? They do better in this type of setting. I here's just an example. I used to, when my kids were little, I used to volunteer at their grade school. And every year my son had this one little boy that his desk was always right by the teacher's desk. And he was a squirt. I mean, I was like, every time I left, it was like, okay, that was a long hour. And my son ended up fourth grade. I go and do art masterpiece volunteer, and I get home and I'm like, oh, he's not in your class this year. And my son is like, no, he's in my class. I'm like, no, he's not. Was he sick today? And he's like, no, he was there. And I'm like, well, this teacher taught completely different. She
Mm,
let kids, I mean, like you would walk in, the energy in the room was different. Kids could stand by their desks. They didn't have to sit and just sit there.
mhm,
It was a
mhm.
completely different environment where my son even thrived. That you go, okay, could it be as simple as this in the future to have our future kids, our
Mhm.
community members thrive versus be 15, 16 years old and pregnant and struggling with substance use. And we continue having this cyclical generational trauma and addiction.
Yeah, I mean, shifting to the mom side, what's the most common misconception about? Because we always look at these mothers, and then there's been movies of bad moms doing this, to their kids or whatever, all different kinds of things, giving them bleach so they're in the emergency room all the time. Like, we have this like stigma here, especially in the United States, of bad moms. What's the most common misconception with these mothers that are born with an AS?
That they don't care. They absolutely care, and that they don't love their babies. Oh my gosh, I've never met a mom that doesn't love her baby. I've met moms that didn't show up at the hospital because they felt that their baby was better off without them.
Right, the addiction takes over.
Yeah, and also we didn't make them feel great. When
Hmm.
you have to have security there and you get to visit for 30 minutes and they're looking at you and then you leave your baby crying. I had one mom explain that. And she goes, it's just better. My baby was better without me. And what baby's not going to cry when their mom leaves?
Hmm.
They're going to. And so they love their kids and they just may not be healthy enough. They're hopeless. And I tell all of my staff, I'm like, it is not hard to be kind. It is not hard to, welcome somebody in, tell them congratulations, because babies are to be celebrated. And maybe it's not in the right environment, but maybe your simple word of congratulations will change the trajectory of this child's life by using one word.
Yeah, and I know there has to be this guilt and fear that is prevalent. There also has to be like, I'm not good enough. I don't think I can do this. I've got this hanging over my head. I mean, how do you work with your staff? And then also, how can we shift society's judgment to compassion?
Yeah. I think for staff and society, I needed like the aha. I needed to understand the science behind addiction. Like I just thought you were just a moral failure, a bad person. You just make bad choices.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand that when you take an opiate and your body makes opiates, opiates are our happy juice. When we laugh, you're releasing endorphins. That's what makes you happy. When you're taking an opiate, yeah, maybe you're taking it initially because you're partying, you know, maybe you're prescribed it for a knee surgery. But eventually you're not taking that opiate for the high. You're taking that opiate to be well. And what that means is just to function, just to get out of bed, you need to have that drug to replace the natural dopamine that your body's not making anymore because you've been taking all of it. You've told your body you don't need it. But once you learn and understand the science behind it, it sure does make much more sense to me. Just like if a diabetic, their pancreas isn't working, so their insulin isn't being secreted, is working too much, not enough. We understand that as a society. We go, okay, so you take insulin. That's what you do. Us as a society, and even those that struggle with addiction, all of us need to take the stigma away, look at the science, and understand that yeah, maybe it started as a choice, but so did diabetes. I mean, type 2, you didn't exercise, you and I are talking about not eating right, you're sedentary, you gain weight. Okay, diabetes came. Those were choices that you
Yes.
made.
100%.
And with opiate use disorder, aka addiction to opiates, maybe you started partying, maybe you were prescribed them for a knee surgery, but you got to the point that you could not live, you could not function without those medications. And the stigma that comes along with that. So many of my families have, I had one mom that had 2 babies. Second baby was C-section. She was parenting, doing great. We sent her home. It probably was about 2017, 2018. And us as medical providers sent her home with 30 days of Percocets. She had a C-section. Well, she lost both of her babies. When I met her, it was right after her 3rd baby. And she was struggling with heroin use. She's like, asking her what happened, why. She goes, I got the pills. I took them the way I was supposed to. And then I'm a brand new mom. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to be taking care of my kids. This is what women do.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sick if I don't take it. And you go to your
Yes.
doctor, you get it filled until you can't get it filled anymore. And then the shame, even the stigma of someone that's struggling on top of themselves is bad. And until we completely look at the science, we're not going to make any headway. And honestly, that's where I had to go. I learned about the science, and the more and more I read, I was like, oh my gosh, these are not bad people. Substances definitely do make people do bad things. If you look at people in jail, you look at, kids in foster care, you can look at that data and go, okay, these kids have a higher chance at substance abuse issues later on. But you're looking at adverse childhood experiences, things that families have been through, the trauma that they've been through, like you were talking about with PTSD. Our kiddos' brains change.
Mm-hmm.
And that trauma that they go through, and if that's trauma because their mom's struggling with substance use, or because they didn't have food on the table, or their parents were in jail, that's what we're doing wrong in society, is not recognizing that our kids just need us a little bit more. They need stability, and then
Yeah,
they thrive.
that's amazing. I want to get into you creating Hushabye Nursery and kind of we'll shift over to the nursery side of things. Was there a moment, a baby or a family or anything? What convinced you to create Hushabye Nursery?
Back to that little neonatal intensive care unit, I had a mom that struggling with heroin use. Now, most of the time we only see fentanyl. Very rarely do we see heroin. But back then it was IV injecting heroin. And this mom came in and her baby had had a really hard night. Finally got him to sleep. And she walks in, and tiny little room with six spaces for babies. And when you come in the neonatal intensive care unit, you have to go and wash your hands. So mom's washing her hands. She's looking at her baby and she's smiling. She does not look like she's under the influence. She looks well at the time.
Mm-hmm.
being completely appropriate. And the nurse looks at her and points her finger and says, "Don't touch your baby." And I like watched it happen. And I'm like, and this mom, washing her hands, tried to not cry. She didn't cry. I don't know how she didn't cry. She went and sat down by her baby. And again, I'm watching it and I'm like, okay, how do you undo what she just said? And really, I think the nurse meant, your baby just fell asleep, but said it very not nicely and completely not trauma informed. And I went over and I talked to mom and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad you're here. This is amazing. He's going to need you when he wakes up. And she sat there. I mean, didn't say anything. She just was like, okay. And hands on her lap, just looking over, watching him, not going to look anywhere else because she didn't feel comfortable,
Right.
obviously. And about 30 minutes later, went back over, baby's sleeping. He hadn't slept for that long all night and he's still sleeping. And I'm like, he must know you're here, mom. Thank you so much for staying. He needs you when he wakes up. He's absolutely going to need you. She stayed for an hour that day. And when she left, she never came back. And that we just could do better. And that baby went to foster care. We had no family. There was no one. And in that instance, we could have met that mom with compassion and love. And instead, we really came at her with the least amount of compassion that anyone could have.
Yeah, the I'm
Showed
not good
up.
enough or you're not good enough. You don't deserve this. There's that,
Yeah.
like why would you not run away from that? Because
And
you're
she showed
basically
up.
telling
She was
me I'm
there.
I'm not a mom. I'm not a mother. I can't handle this.
Yeah.
So, and it's so wild there's so many little things you said in that story that's amazing. It's like just having there and I do a spiritual podcast and a lot of people kind of go woo woo with this, but there's a thing with and scientifically they've proven this now with hormones and all that stuff. There's a thing with a baby knowing that the mother's there.
Absolutely. Yeah. The
And I
babies
think
do.
there's like a smell, there's like a lot of different
Yep.
things. I watched a
It's
show on that.
Yeah, and just, I mean, we look at it, if our families come to us, even if they're struggling, I want them in the room. I'm not going to let them, if they're under the influence, I'm not letting them hold their baby while they're under the influence. I'm getting them a shower, I'm getting them food, and I'm telling them to go night-night. They go to sleep, but what they're doing for that baby's brain development just by being in the same room is something
Mm,
that no one can do. Only
mhm.
biology can do that. And so when a mom shows up, that mom showing up, she showed up. And I even tell my staff, I'm like, if they called, if they texted, they showed up, and that should be celebrated. As we always go by, we want the W's, we want the little wins, and then the little wins, you get those, and then you have that great big capital W of a win that adds up. And those little wins mean so much and are pivotal to healing babies, but really healing families.
That's amazing. You created this approach, the Eat Sleep Console, and it's revolutionary. It differs from traditional care, and you kind of went into it a little bit, but I want to talk about the minimizing the medication and then kind of your approach medically and emotionally, if you don't mind.
Yeah. So Eat, Sleep, and Console. Let's go back 5 years ago. In the neonatal intensive care units across the world, we would look at 20 plus questions, looking at a baby every 3 hours and going, yep, they do that. Yep, they do that. Nope, they don't. Yep, yep, yep. Very, very subjective. You could do it at one time and you'd get a 2, and I'd do it and get a 35. Completely not very often valid. We still do that here at Hushabye. We do training on it, and you will still get differences. So Dr. Grossman came up with 3 things. He's like, can a baby eat? Can they sleep? And can they be consoled? If they can do those 3 things, they're probably doing okay as far as not needing to give medication. Now, for them to eat, sleep, and be consoled, sometimes that means they get held 24/7 in a quiet, dark environment that is not in the neonatal intensive care unit and is also with the family. That is what we ended up implementing to be able to have that decrease in length of stay from 22 days to 8. When we look at the amount of medication that we have to give in the hospital, in the NICU, say 5 years ago, 95, probably 98% of our babies were getting morphine every 3 hours. They come in the NICU, they're withdrawing. That's what we gave. With Eat, Sleep, and Console, with people being a little open to, going, okay, maybe the NICU that was developed for babies that are the size of a dollar bill and for babies that have heart and breathing issues, maybe that isn't the right environment for this type of baby. What we've been able to do, if you put them in a quiet, dark environment, like what you and I would do if we had the flu, only 8% of our babies, 8, so less than 1 out of every 10, need even 1 dose of morphine at Hushabye if they come to us not started.
That's crazy.
It is crazy. And I never would have thought it. Do babies that are exposed to fentanyl now withdraw different than what they used to with heroin? Yeah, maybe. It's really hard to be able to take the variables out, but less than 1 in 10, if they come to us before being started on morphine, even need 1 dose. And I would give babies dose upon dose upon dose. Some studies now are showing that there might be a link to developmental delays and deficits to that morphine that we're prescribing afterwards. And that is a little frightening to me.
Yeah, 100%. But I mean, that's our society. We just, if there's a problem, here's a prescription.
Yeah.
So we have a problem baby. So, and I couldn't even imagine that. I don't have the patience like you guys do, but I mean, if you have a problem baby, let's give it drugs. Then it won't be a problem anymore for 3 hours or 2 hours, whatever.
Yeah. And honestly, in the neonatal intensive care unit, when a baby cries, that's a good thing. That means they have enough energy. They're feeling well enough to cry. So that in the NICU is a good thing, even though, of course, we don't want them to cry, but they are not our emergency that we need to go to. It's the baby that is not crying, that isn't responsive when I poke them with a needle. Those are the babies that we're really worried about, because those are the ones that are maybe not going to be with us for very long.
You said something about family, and I know you champion this family-centered model. And you were saying, you just said, that they have to be held for 24/7. What does that look like, that family-centered model? Is it bringing in grandma? Is it bringing in aunt? Is it bringing in like moms, parents, like whatever family there is? How do you maintain that?
Yeah, we at Hushabye do one-to-one caregivers. So if I have a mom, a dad, a grandparent, aunt, uncle, all of those above, I still have another staff member for that baby. So somebody's got to sleep at some time. And when they're ready to sleep, my team just takes over and holds baby in that same room, exact same room with mom, because we want that brain
Connection, right?
yeah, whatever woo-woo going on. We want
The
all
safety.
yeah, we want that there, but that's how we're different than the other entities that are doing Eat, Sleep, and Console. So Eat, Sleep, and Console, are they eating? Are they sleeping? Are they being consoled? It's being done in some hospitals, but it usually is only being done with families that are well, meaning they have to have their own, they have to have their 2 caregivers. Where at Hushabye, we can take families that are struggling in hopes that my team is going to say the right word at the right time. And as soon as they say they're ready for treatment, we're going to respond and react and connect them with the services and do the warm handoffs to get them into recovery.
Because that seems like that's the problem, is the mother in recovery. But you guys, and then getting into, I've seen that so many times where I've had, people that I've known, even family members, that couldn't get into any type of treatment. There was no treatment. So you're talking about not only getting the mothers into recovery, but you guys have built the relationships already where you can do that. And then you even said, give them a warm hand.
Yeah,
Like,
we will.
how did you develop all that?
I talk to everybody and I make everybody talk to me. And, sharing our data and helping all of our community partners understand what their part is in this child's life and what their impact can be. And really making sure that there is an open line of communication between the community partner and us and the community partner and the family. We do a lot of work that many don't. Many may go, here's a list of 10 treatment centers, go ahead and call them. Okay, parents don't have a phone, they don't have electricity to charge their phone, they ran out of minutes. Okay, those are just three barriers that they come into play. But plus, you're supposed to fill out a 15-page application and you're under the influence. How are you supposed to do that?
Right.
We will help them do that. We will get them transportation. We will do it virtually if that's what we need to do. I think the huge benefit of what Hushabye's been able to do is we have taken the time to learn the nuances of all of our community partners, or most of them, and trying to understand what's a good referral for them. So
Mm.
we have one community partner that has fabulous outcomes, but you can't have your phone for a year. So what we found at the beginning was we were giving referrals left and right, and our families were going and they're like, what? I'm not going to have a phone for a year? And they wouldn't go. And then they were like, well, see, Hushabye couldn't help me. They can't help me. Nobody can help me. Well, we're able to have that discussion before we even outreach, going, these are the criteria. Is that a fit?
Baby or phone? Which one?
Yep. Yep. It's like, is that a fit? If it's not, nope, that's a hard no.
Mm-hmm.
We have a family right now today going to, the mom and dad want to stay together, but they both want to go to treatment and they want to have that opportunity to have baby end up meeting them in treatment in the future as needed. And there's two organizations that can do that. Two organizations that have seen our families thrive and families become unified and succeed. And so having that relationship with them, helping them see the outcomes, it's all about communication, but it also is doing a little bit more than what the average organization would do.
This is so good for not-for-profits, what you just said. And I want people to understand this. This is huge. And we're going to veer off just real quick. NGOs and not-for-profits, you're giving them a win. And your reputation is saying that we have wins. And here's how we're different in here. When somebody gives me a win, I have a way better relationship with them because that's what you want. You want your statistics. I mean, most NGOs are starving for money. I mean, everybody is. Because you could do way more, and there's just not enough. So whenever you're handing somebody over to them and you've done all the work, you're not just trying to dish something off. That's huge. I mean, that makes it so much easier for both parties.
Yeah, for both, because then we know when we're giving a referral that it's going to be a good outcome. And if it's not, then I think we've built the relationships well enough with our community partners for them to, circle back and be like, this is what happened. Recovery's hard. Not always.
100%.
We say like day 10 in rehab is not good.
No,
Day 10,
everybody relapses.
Everybody wants to leave.
Right.
So we'll be like, what day is it? Oh, it's day 10. That's why they think they're awful right now. Okay, let's see if we can get them to stay, because on day 12, they're going to think that they're the best thing in the whole. So
that's so awesome. Can you kind of give us maybe you have, and I know you have a ton of them, but like a success story, a family whose journey with Hushabye kind of reaffirmed your belief in exactly what you're doing?
Yeah. We last year in Q2, so June, we'd look at our data and our average length of stay had bumped up by like 1.5 days. And we're like, what in the world is going on? And I mean, it doesn't seem like that much, but it was like, okay, that we don't want that. What is happening? And we as a team were like, you know what? I think we need to get everybody on the same page, because we had a lot of people coming from different environments, people finding us on Craigslist and applying for jobs. So a lot of people didn't understand the history behind it. Why did it happen? Then heard the story of the nurse pointing and hadn't heard those things. And so I ended up implementing with every new hire. I meet with everybody for just an hour within their first 60 days to make sure we're all on the same page. And fast forward in January, we had a mom that came in that prior to all of this and doing a lot of education. I don't know that this would have happened, but we had a mom that used fentanyl probably 5 minutes before she delivered. She came to Hushabye. She fought to get her baby to Hushabye. She got baby to Hushabye. She had 2 other babies. Her rights were severed, being raised with grandma, but she did not have rights. And this mommy ended up coming to Hushabye. She was homeless. She had a place to stay. She had been started on methadone, but wasn't to what we call a happy dose. not a dose that you're high, but it's the dose where you go, oh my gosh, the fog is lifted. I finally feel better. My family's always tell me I feel normal. She's never been to that dose. And so we're working with her clinic, talking with the providers, having our counselors talk with mom and the providers so she feels comfortable, and helping them understand her use and when it wears off and when it doesn't and when it doesn't work. And even fast forward more, her baby's with us, and this mom was talking with other moms, finding out that they could breastfeed. And she was like, well, how do I get to breastfeed? And we're like, well, you can't have an abnormal drug screen. You have to have a normal drug screen, means we have to get you well. And she's like, but I'm not using anymore. And we're like, okay, but we, not saying we didn't believe her, but the likelihood of being able to go from homeless to using 5 minutes before you deliver to not using like after 48 hours at Hushabye is kind of a surprise to us. She begged her providers to do drug screens on her. She's like, do a drug screen. I'm sure it's going to be negative. And she finally got that negative drug screen. She got to breastfeed her baby. On discharge, we thought that baby was going to go with grandma. Grandma was like, I can't do this again. She's like, I'm already raising two. And to everyone's just sadness in the unit and the mom's unit, or mom's sadness, baby went to foster care. And that night, we're trying to find a place for her to stay because we thought that my team thought that baby and mom were going to be able to be admitted to this treatment center. I think wishful thinking when you look back at it. But the only way she could go to this treatment center that she had been approved to was with baby. And baby ended up going to foster care. So we didn't have a place for her to stay. And she called me that night and she's like, can I at least have a blanket? Because I don't, and I'm like, what do you mean a blanket? And she's like, I don't have any place to go. Oh my gosh, I'm like texting everybody I possibly know. And literally at 10:30 at night, one of our community partners is taking a bed from one home to another home, not sober living. I don't know what the designation is, but one of the goodies. 10:30 at night, she's like, I get her in an Uber, but give me another hour. And that mom ended up going to this treatment home, residential place. She's staying there with them. She ends up sending me a picture of her and baby, and they're doing great. She's seeing baby twice a week because that's what our child welfare lets them do. Her foster mom actually would let her do pictures and texting, so she had that win every single day of look at your baby, look at how they're doing, keep working. She was very blessed with that. 6 weeks later, I'm keeping in contact with her. She's sending pictures. And she's like, I'm still, well, I haven't used, I'm determined, I'm getting my baby back. And I'm like, sounds great. 6 weeks later, I get a picture from the lady that got her into the house at 10:30 at night with her at one of our community partners called Dress for Success. It's where people that need to go do interviews, they get a suit, and I mean, it's gently used clothes. And she's in front of a computer applying for a job, dressed in a suit. And 2 weeks ago, she was reunified with her baby. And her aunt, her sister was approved to be what we call a responsible adult, but DC has approved her to be the monitor. We had said it would be 6 months if we were lucky to get them reunified, and it was less than 3.
Wow, that's amazing.
So you just see this mom, and our team really just built her up. And when that baby went to foster care, my team was on fire. They were like, in the world. They were like, she's done everything. And I had to remind them that, she's 9 days well. 9 days. Think about what, and you're like, but we're seeing this mom. And I'm like, okay, but she's new to recovery. She was homeless. We have to have other safety measures in place. But to see that shift in the entire team, for that mom to feel that she had that many people on her side. Her previous DCS worker with the other kids needed to retire. She needed to not have a job. And my team stuck up for her and they were like, the way this interaction is going is not appropriate. I think you need to step out and, take a breather, and then you can come back in. But that wouldn't have happened anywhere. The mom was literally not being treated well. And my team professionally just said, just check yourself a little bit and then come back in. And that mom just needed us to support her and feel that she had an army behind her. And now to see her thriving, beyond proud of her. And I can guarantee in the hospital, I've never seen that happen.
No, yeah, that wouldn't happen. That's crazy. So, like you and your staff, and I know this work can be emotionally heavy. I mean, this is like heavy, heavy. You're dealing with an innocent baby. How do you teach your staff, and how do you maintain like emotion and spiritual well-being? Like, is there like even with the story for that, it would be like so hard not to get caught up in everything, and then you're running trauma, drama, trauma, drama constantly. How do you get that emotional heaviness out?
Yeah. I pray a lot, and just pray for guidance and pray that my leadership for my team is what they need. I always encourage everyone that I'm really good at giving families grace, but us as a team to assume best intent in everything that we do instead of going
Mm.
like, oh my gosh, this is bad, to go, okay, what are they thinking? Because to me, I'm sure that they're thinking that this is a good move, but I'm not understanding it.
Mhm.
Help me articulate or understand what's going on. This Valentine's Day, my family helped me with a little thing for our team. We have a hush and heal room. It's just a quiet space for our team to go down. We have an upstairs, and then we have a basement, and the basement is administrative storage and all of that. And we made this hush and heal room. It has massage chair in there, and we all check ourselves and going, you know what? I think maybe we need some hush time. It's in that instance when that baby went to foster care, I could have probably sent every one of them to the hush room had we had it at that time. They just needed to realize that look at all the good that you're doing, and that, I guess, never saying never. Like I always think that maybe mom's not ready yet, but maybe tomorrow she'll be ready for recovery. But also just giving ourselves grace, giving others grace, and praying.
Yeah, yeah. That I mean, yeah, that seems. I want to kind of shift real quick before we close with something I think is really important, and there's so much misinformation, and you're on the front lines doing this every day. What advice would you offer someone, with like family, like a family member, and they're watching, their daughter struggling with substance use, and then there's a baby involved, and there's grandma, what's the right way to support? How do they support without judgment? Is there like boundaries? What do you tell the family?
Yeah. I think that every family's different in the matter of I've met so many that, you have to do tough love. I thankfully have never been in that situation that I've had to do that. But I see families get torn apart by substance use. And you see families that you can say they enable and, love them too hard, whatever. For families that have someone struggling right now, I think everyone needs to understand that they can't do it for them.
Mm.
They have to be ready, but not always do you have to do it for them. Meaning it's okay to set that boundary and be like, you know what? You're dangerous when you're under the influence. You steal from me. It is okay to do that. The biggie, connect them with Hushabye, connect them with other treatment facilities, because you never know what one's going to be the right one
Mm.
and who is going to be on at that moment that's going to be the last time that they use. I think
Mhm.
most people that are in recovery can go, the last time was blah 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 blah, and
Mhm.
this is what happened. I talked to this person, or I met with this person. It is a very clear time that they know when it happened and how it happened. And I would just encourage families to know that you're not a bad person if you just can't do it yet. Now, if you have a grandbaby coming into the world, or an aunt, you're going to be an auntie, please consider stepping up. You can reach out to us, look at our website. We've got tons of education on there on how to care for a baby that's born substance exposed. But babies do better with their families. We do have to look at what the world's going to look like in 15, 20 years. And babies going to foster care, being taken from their families, is not good for brain development. It's not good for generational trauma and addiction. Out to us. We'll help.
Yeah, that's so good. I want to kind of just two more questions. I have like whenever I think of what's going on, and especially here in the United States, and I know you're in Phoenix, right? In Arizona. If you could change one policy overnight that would serve the babies and the families, what do you think it would be?
For us right now, that would me selfishly, but if you have a pregnant or parenting family that's struggling with substance use, so you know that, the policy that I would like to see and supported would be that it's an automatic referral to Hushabye or to an organization that does similar work, meaning that there's a care pathway, like you would do a care pathway for someone with insulin, with diabetes. You get insulin and then you go see a dietitian. Okay, well, you get started on methadone or Suboxone, and then you go see Hushabye. That treatment pathway and that being supported by Medicaid. We do have great support from our Medicaid system here in Arizona, but there is not a reimbursement code for what we do. So what we get reimbursed at is what you get reimbursed for an adult detox is what we get reimbursed at, which is 50% of what we need to be sustainable. And I know we're doing something that's never been done, but that policy change needs to come from high up from, the feds and come down. But if we could change just the fact of we're all going to agree that if there's a family that is pregnant and parenting with substance use, we're going to get them help. And this is what the treatment pathway looks like. And we're not going to veer from the treatment pathway unless that it's the best in the family's interest. What's best for the entity, for the entity's piggy bank.
That makes sense. Yeah. So last question. I want you to think about this hard. What's your wildest, most beautiful dream for Hushabye Nursery's future? And how can our listeners help make it real?
I think my wildest dream would be we're connected with a family, and I know that family is going to have their baby at Hushabye. I would like that. What that will mean, another part of the dream is that we'll expand. Because if we would work with all of our babies that we've cared for their moms prenatally, we'd be at greater than 100% capacity very, very quickly. So that would be my wildest
The
wish.
biggest dream, wildest wish is so they would be having the babies there at Hushabye Nursery.
They would deliver at the hospital, but then if their baby is a candidate, they would transfer to Hushabye. A lot of times what happens right now is just stigma and hospitals feeling that they do the exact same work that we do. Not necessarily is the mom's and dad's wish to transfer their baby to Hushabye honored. And if they're busy, we get the babies. But if they're not, the narrative to families a lot of times changes. And
yeah. How can listeners help you guys? Is it easy to give on the website? And of course, we'll have all the links and everything in there. But what's the easiest way for us to be able to help you guys?
Yeah, I think easiest, share this podcast. My goodness, share it. Follow us on social media. We're hushabye.nursery. And then our website, www.hushabyenursery.org. You can always give. I would love you to give. We are a nonprofit. Over half of our budget is us fundraising. But I think the biggest is sharing, and anything that you learned today, share it and know that there is hope out there. And babies heal.
Yeah, it's so cool. And they're innocent. So they're born into this. And then you guys are healing. That's the beautiful part. And this is an amazing story. And it's such a meaningful, I mean, you have to, even though it's super stressful and emotionally crazy, you have to know, this is what you're doing and this is impacting the world and helping people. So, you have Tara, you have an amazing mission, and that mission is changing lives, and it's awesome, especially something that's innocent like a baby. It's
Exactly.
helpless. There's nothing that it can do. You can't say, hey, have some self-responsibility. There's
exactly. And
you're helping the most innocent, and that's what's so cool. So I encourage everybody to like your social media, share this podcast, and also give, and we'll have all the links in the website. Thanks again, Tara. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Thank you.
Let me have you hold on one second.